And I'm sitting here in the studio with me is George DiCaprio. He's the executive producer of the new movie Ice on Fire that I played a role in. I'm in it. George made it happen, helped make it happen. You know, a big effort by a small bunch of us. And George, welcome back, first of all.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
And thanks for being with us. Let's talk about Ice on Fire for a minute. I know there were a couple of areas you wanted to get into specifically with regard to this.
Well, one of the really specific parts of Ice on Fire is a progression of scientific antidotes to what's happening with our environment. Now, the big scheme, I suppose, in all of this is got to do with the drawdown. And the drawdown is a list of 100 things that should all be happening simultaneously if we even have a prayer of affecting the amount of CO2 in the environment. Mm-hmm. And probably we covered maybe the first 10. And among those, some of the apparent cures, if you want to call it that, to the surplus of CO2 in the environment are really fascinating. One of them is biomimicry. Biomimicry is a principle wherein science looks at how nature itself approaches a problem and finds out how to get around it or fix it or make it better. And in the film, they demonstrate an incredible new technique, which is called direct air capture, and it seizes CO2 literally out of the air and by a mystical process converts it finally into stone, and the CO2 stays in the stone for, I suppose, geological epochs. It's sequestered there. It'll never come out. And of course, this is exactly what we want to happen on a big scale. And it might be costly, but as the picture points out, it'll be less costly if we're near a source of power that is it's very inexpensive. Geothermal is the answer. So if we can get enough geothermal going, and theoretically we can do that, we can use that energy to convert CO2 into stone, which is a naturally occurring process that happens in nature, only it takes millions of years for it to happen. It also happens in the ocean, and in the ocean that process is called marine snow. Yeah. Another fascinating natural process that I knew very little about until about a year ago. And what happens is at the top of the ocean surface, maybe the top half-inch of the entire ocean surface, the cyanobacteria are able to capture CO2 and kind of convert it into a kind of a matrix. It's a little support system. It's like a web. And the bacteria continue this substrate and build it out until it's kind of a mat. And it occurs under certain circumstances. Then the mat slowly sinks to the bottom of the ocean, into the abyss, and becomes stone after a while. It never surfaces anymore.
And that's where we get concrete from.
Yeah.
Is digging up that stone, and that's calcium carbonate.
Yeah. And what happens is that it may be possible to find a particular catalyst for this process that is not toxic. And people are experimenting with different substances, especially in a particular Croatian professor named Professor Puškarić, who is in our movie, and he has a wonderful scene by the ocean where he's explaining this process, and then he shows us this marine snow, these mats of material that are slowly sinking, and it's you could believe you're in outer space. You've probably never seen these things. The movie is full of new inventive things that you haven't come across. And just from the viewpoint of a scientific geek, I think a lot of people would enjoy it just to find out what's out there. It's like a big shopping list of things that we could do that you would never have seen anywhere but in the movie.
Yeah, that's a lot of the feedback I get is to that effect. And people can watch it at HBO.com. Go to the free movies, and it's free. You don't have to be an HBO subscriber. And speaking of HBO, by the way, I'll be on Bill Maher's show tonight on HBO too. Just a shameless plug there. But so
plug away. Bill Maher's the greatest.
Yeah. So where do we go from here with all this? All that we've learned, George, and now we're seeing. I mean, even in the political world now, new charges against Trump for sexual assault just came out. He assaulted a woman inside a Bergdorf, whatever it is, dressing room. You know, it's like the world seems to be captured by this bizarre man in the White House at the same time that we're facing literally a planet-wide apocalypse. I mean, the insect apocalypse is happening because of climate change and human species destruction. The mammals, I mean, you know, 90-some% of mammals on Earth now are humans or human feedstock. Where do we, you know, and we address these issues with Ice on Fire to some extent. I mean, some of the politics we don't talk so much. Well, actually, I think I kind of ranted about the politics a little bit in the movie.
Oh, you did a good job. I think that at the screening, which was at LACMA about 2 weeks back, when you mentioned that the people who are deliberately going about and setting about deceiving people about what's happening with our environment and how human activity is causing the excess CO2, and you said those people who are deliberately doing this should be tried at The Hague. Everyone jumped up and screamed.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a lynch mob there for a second.
It was a moment.
Yeah, it was a moment. For you, you should be proud. You should be proud. It's a great idea. I think probably we could get a petition going.
I think this is a crime against humanity, frankly, to profit off the destruction of the biosphere and then pay people to lie for you about it. It seems to me that that's a crime against humanity.
Oh, it's despicable. It's like our country is being run by 1,000 Tony Sopranos or something. It's just,
Yeah.
It's an organized gang that's doing it. I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I'm just bewildered, and I feel I'm not alone. This idea of being confused to the point where it's like a double head fake. You look this way, and you look that way, and then you snap your head back, and what just happened? You can barely cope with it, especially today's news, which really fits the bill.
Well, I think at a certain level we have to stabilize ourselves as much as we have to stabilize the world. I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you reckon with that?
That is true. There's only so much we can ask the governments to do, and I know full well that the problem is so immense that, in a way, governments have to handle it. But it's got to start still from that individual feeling of the worth of nature and the worth of the natural world. And it's got to be very close to your heart. It has to be your deepest devotion in life. That's the only way I can explain it. And to be devoted like that is almost a hermetic secret. It's almost something that you keep with your soul. It's a bargain you make with yourself, but it's got to be there, and it has to infect millions of people. And maybe it will be like that. Maybe it won't be a big bonfire. It'll just be a billion glowing coals of love and concern for the earth. It's got to come about some way. I wish I had the magic button, believe me, but I don't. I can only insist on myself thinking this way.
Yeah.
And I feel you do too. I feel you do.
I do, yeah. And we have to do our internal personal work as well as the external work. In the 30 seconds we have left, till we hit a break here, and go see Ice on Fire, HBO.
Oh yeah, I can't say that enough. It's a wonderful movie. It's one revelation after the next about possibility and how we could turn this around. I hope so many people see it and try to believe in it and try to reach for it. It really is the only way to go.
Yeah, amen.